Had a boomer moment. Good afternoon, everybody who's watching this or will watch this, and so forth and so on. My name is Connell, the Cigar DM. Here shortly, we'll be having Shadow and Jack with us. But I just wanted to go ahead and start and wondering how everybody's doing. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't watched YouTube in the last couple of days, we and Shadow both have had 3 long days of streaming. It started Friday over at Shauna's channel. I have no idea, man. We're live.
Oh.
We started with Shauna after Max Chill stream, which I did. Then we did last night Shadow's late night Shadow chat, which went to 4 o'clock in the morning my time.
Is that better? No, it's not better.
I don't know, man.
Let me come back.
All right. Then we're doing this today. So hopefully everybody enjoys today's chat. Today we're going to be talking about reviewing the 1986 Jim Henson's Labyrinth, which is one of my favorite movies. I think it is one of the better fantasy movies, definitely of the 80s. It has everything that you want.
Okay, that's not working. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Yeah. So the conversation got brought up once or twice. What fantasy movies make for good D&D campaigns, and my vote would probably be the Labyrinth. It has almost everything you need in there to be a good campaign. I mean, there are others. Princess Bride. Hey, Mark. Princess Bride being one of them. Legends with Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. And for the life of me, I cannot remember the woman's name. And there's a bunch of movies that I think would be fun to make an RPG out of. I just have to do a little bit of work to make it happen. And you got to find the right crew, of course. So, with that being said, hopefully everybody's having a good weekend. Maybe got to RPG a little, maybe got to game a little bit. Got to hang out with some friends a little bit. Something fun for the weekend. It is Sunday, so hopefully everybody had a good weekend. We're waiting for Shadow to.
There we go. Can you put the link in the chat for the little guy?
Yes, I can.
He wants to stream from downstairs. His allergies are kicking his ass. He's not feeling so hot.
That is more than fair. Copy and paste. And off to the races. So I want to talk about a little bit about last night. Last night we were on Shadow's chat, and we were talking about different planets, different worlds to run your RPG, it being sci-fi or fantasy. Hell, you can do it horror. I mean, there's a bunch of alien movies out there. I mean, Aliens being one of them, but there's a lot of sci-fi alien horror movies. Or you could do a Cthulhu-ish planet if you wanted to. I mean, whatever.
Sky's the limit?
Yeah, quite literally, the sky is the limit for what you want to do. I do agree. I think sci-fi is not as limiting as fantasy.
To be honest, it's sad that sci-fi isn't more popular, in my opinion, just because it's like this. When we were talking about it a while back, the superhero genre is just it's getting ready to die, but it had its run in modern times, in the 21st century, where it dominated for a long time, and anybody could go into a superhero movie and understand everything that's going on. And I feel the same way about sci-fi. It's so much closer to our own time than going back into the historical past and tweaking it to making it a fantasy game. Whether it be ninjas and samurais, the Middle Ages, the Aztec Empire, things like that are harder to get enthused about and to be able to put myself into that mindset. Imagining I'm there in any of those past historical eras in a fantasy situation are harder for me than to picture myself suddenly on a starship, facing off with aliens or robots or things like that. That's, that could literally be tomorrow. Suddenly that could be our reality. And it just seems that there's some weird element or factor that's, made fantasy games more popular than science fiction. And I think it's just a shame.
When schools made The Hobbit required reading in high school, they kind of set the mark. I know that's not so much anymore, but
yeah, it was never required reading for me, but there were some science fiction stories. I think Fahrenheit 451, that's more a dystopian thing, and a few others. Like John Carter. I think that's a mixture of science fiction and fantasy. Star Wars, same thing. And of course, science fiction is fantasy in the fact that it's not real and you're fantasizing about something. It's just such a shame that there are not more people into the sci-fi genre as at least I'd like to see.
I mean, kind of. I mean, you got let's say comic book. Let's go back to comic book movies really quick when we're talking about sci-fi. You got Iron Man. Iron Man is nothing but sci-fi.
Absolutely.
You got the Incredible Hulk, the retelling of Jekyll and Hyde, which is sci-fi.
Fantastic Four. They go up in a spaceship, get mutated, come down, and start doing their thing.
Right. You got Captain America, that was a subject to experiments during World War II. That's sci-fi. I mean, I think there's more sci-fi than we give it credit to. I'm not going to really throw Thor in it because I think Thor is more fantasy than it is sci-fi, even though he comes from an alien planet, which I think is just a cop out.
Yeah, I don't really think it was an alien planet. Well, welcome to the show, Mr. Man.
Hello. My allergies are bothering me all day, so I'm not going to use my camera, and I'm probably going to be muting very often.
Yeah, no,
his allergies are kicking his butt.
Well, Mark, you're absolutely right. If Fahrenheit, Animal Farm, Slaughterhouse, Greek mythology, Narnia, and a few other ones were required reading when I was in high school, then my lovely aunt had her list of books I needed to read. She thought it would make for a more well-rounded person.
Well, Animal Farm is socialist propaganda, and Orwell, for a long time in his life, was not necessarily a communist as in the way we think of it now as Stalinism and Leninism, but he was certainly one of on the socialist end.
See,
he fought for the Republicans in the Civil War.
Yeah.
You can't get more socialist than fighting for them in a war and going out of your way to fight for them in a war. I mean, you've heard of Homage to Catalonia?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the story of how he went to Spain to report on it, or at least that's what he says he did, but he got caught up in some communist militia and fought for them. But
Hemingway fell underneath the same trap.
It's much more likely that he went there, I also have this, well, not just, like Peter Kemp, he went there specifically to fight for the nationalists.
Yeah.
Like Orwell says that he went there to report, but almost immediately, not immediately, but very quickly joins a militia. And then when the Stalinists destroy his militia and he escapes to France, he ends up in this nationalist town, or not nationalist, but a town that supports the nationalists, and it just I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Orwell. 1984 is good. Animal Farm is also it's a good read, but it's anti-Stalinist, yes, but it holds certain people that fought for the Reds in the Russian Civil War up to a much higher standard than they really were.
Oh, that's more than fair. Hell, as I said, Hemingway went over to fought in the Spanish War as well and reported from the Spanish wave. And I personally, I used to love Hemingway growing up. Now I think he's a blowhard, but that's just my opinion. But a lot of these people that write these novels at that time are writing. They're trying to explain their experiences through a medium that they hope other people would understand.
I get that. I mean,
once upon a time, being a socialist was not a bad word. I still don't think it's a bad word. I just think it's the person behind the word you need to be concerned about.
Well, the problem with socialism is that most people, including the person who's in the middle of the screen, used to think socialism and communism are basically the same thing, which not only does that make so many contradictions, it makes many things impossible that really weren't. Because if communism and socialism are the same thing, then the Spanish phalanx, they weren't socialist. The Australian, they weren't socialist. Hitler, not a socialist. He was actually just a capitalist, which is very inaccurate.
Well, Hitler was Hitler. I'm not going to justify what he is or isn't. He was a straight-out monster.
That is true. But people seem to think, well, what happened is people eventually thought that socialism was just this inherently, which socialism is left-wing, obviously. It is left-wing economics. But being economically left-wing does not mean you can't be right-wing when it comes to nationality or religion.
That's fair. I'm getting schooled in politics by a kid who just doing his freshman year in high school. So there's that.
You have a point, yeah. And take the synarchists in Mexico, the National Synarchist Union. They were fascist. I mean, Italian fascism was kind of socialist, at least economically. Mussolini used to be a communist, but then he realized that communism is dumb. But then he decided to create an ideology which was arguably more dumb instead. But the synarchists in Mexico, I've heard them described as the Catholic Taliban, which, whilst yes is inaccurate because they were still extremely radical when it comes to religion, but were also very much socialist.
Right. No, I get that. I understand where you're going with that one. I mean, I'm Catholic, and Opus Dei Catholics kind of give me the willies, but that's just me.
Well,
it's okay to like life. That's all I'm saying. That's really where I'm going with that one. It's okay to enjoy life. You only get one of these. But anyways, so did you guys have a chance to watch the movie?
Yes, we did. But I think, well, there was 3 problems with it that aren't actually related to the movie. Number one, the movie was broken in 2 ways. The first one is that our TV kept turning off, and we kept getting kicked back to the menu, which I don't know if that had anything to do with the movie or not. Then the last time we came back, and the entire screen was broken in half, splitting apart. And the last issue was that my dad's drug supply was leaking, and I think it affected all of us. Maybe that was just a movie, now that I think about it.
I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Drugs are bad. Stay in school, kids.
So are you saying your dad is the Walter White of California? Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, God, no. No. You must be thinking of my brother.
Okay,
I do not advocate.
You've seen Breaking Bad, right?
What?
You've seen Breaking Bad, right?
Yes.
I'm just giving you a little bit of hell, there, Shadow.
Who is that a picture of? Sport, who is that a picture of?
Oh, that's a picture of Maximilian the First of Mexico. The second Mexican emperor, installed by Napoleon III in the 1860s during the United States Civil War, because France wanted a puppet in Mexico, and the conservatives had just lost the Civil War. Basically, they lost round one of the Civil War, the Reform War, and they went over and they just wanted to get an emperor because they used to be an emperor under Agustin the First of the Iturbide, and they wanted an emperor again, but because the previous emperor was kicked out and went in Europe, and they called him back, like, hey, the Spanish are trying to take us over again. We need your help. And he came back, he rushed back to help his country, and then they shot him for it, which is why I am fundamentally opposed to any Mexican republic, but that's besides the point. But back on track to the history. So the French wanted a puppet in Mexico because the Mexican Republic wasn't paying their debts to Britain, Spain, and France. Spain and England pulled out of the agreement to invade Mexico and install a puppet, but the French invaded, and they were looking for an emperor. Napoleon thought that the brother of the Austrian emperor would be the greatest choice, but he refused. He said, no, I don't want to be the emperor. I shouldn't be the emperor. But then a few years later, he came back, or not a few years later, a bit later, he came back and said, you know what? Fine. You can make me emperor as long as I am democratically elected by the people of Mexico to become emperor. And then Napoleon went over and made some fake referendum, gave it to him. And then him and his wife were really excited because they thought that it was a legitimate referendum, which it wasn't. And they came over and almost won. The leader of the Mexican Republican forces was Benito Juarez, who is said to be the first indigenous Mexican president. But the problem with that is that he wasn't. In fact, he took most of the Indians sided with the empire because the Republic was taking their land. The Republic was also taking the church land. But then he almost won the Civil War. He even offered Benito Juarez, he said, I can let you become prime minister, because Maximilian was a very liberal monarch, especially compared to his brother, who was absolutist. But he was very liberal when it comes to European monarchs, especially of that era. And he so he wanted, because he was on the conservative, he was the leader of the conservative side, despite him being very liberal. And a lot of his allies were actually very mad at him because most of his ideas were pretty liberal for the time. And he offered Benito Juarez position as prime minister because they agreed on pretty much everything. At least he thought they did. And he refused to spark the Civil War again, or continue the Civil War, and the empire originally almost won until the American Civil War ended, and then America decided to mess up Mexico for the 15th time and send money to the Republican forces, who then won the Civil War. And Benito Juarez contradicted the Constitution that he himself wrote, and broke nearly every single law that he wrote in the Constitution, because he forbade capital punishment. He forbade a lot of the things that he ended up doing to, not the Mexican monarchy, because it was really just him, because his wife escaped, but he refused to leave. He was offered the chance to leave, but he said, what's going to happen to my top generals? And they were going to be executed, and he just couldn't allow that to happen, so he stayed there, and all four of them were executed, including many more of the imperial forces.
Okay. All right. That's more about Mexican history than I think I knew. I don't know. But so you guys were actually all the hiccups. You guys were what?
It led to Diaz. Benito Juarez led to the dictatorship of Diaz, which led to the revolution, which led to Diaz did actually do a lot for Mexico, but a lot of people didn't see it that way, so they revolted against him, and then Elias Calles became president for a bit, and extremely anti-clerical. Started the Crusader War, which is the main reason why I love Ireland so much, is because they helped us in that war against the KKK, because that's the state of Mexican civil wars. You have one side, which is the United States socialists, anti-religious people, and then the KKK against Mexico, the Catholic Church, and Ireland. Or not Mexico, the rural farmers uprising.
Gotcha. So, but after everything, going back on topic, after everything you guys done, what? Well, not to the topic of what we're talking about today. I mean, we could start watching Spanish war movies, reviewing them, and you could tell us how
don't even. Dude, you just opened up a can of worms that will never end.
You're completely right. You just did, yes.
I know my point.
So the Labyrinth, you guys were actually able, with all the screwy hiccups, you were actually able to watch all of it.
Yeah,
we watched it.
All right, let's start with the big stuff. Let's get this pig rolling. Do you guys have favorite characters?
The dog.
Yep, the dog.
The dog. The fox's mount.
Even from the beginning, the dog was the best character. I mean, the girl was kind of the dumb. The stepmother is the worst human ever. She forced the dog to be out in the rain. And the dad was only in there for like 10 seconds, so I don't really know anything about it.
Yeah, he was a decent dad. He tried, but, dealing with a hormonal teenager, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So the dog. Wow.
Yeah, the dog.
See, I figured your dad would be favorite character would have been the paladin.
The fox or whatever that animal was. I liked him. I liked him, but he was a little comical. All the characters were comical. I like, I'm not even sure who my second favorite character would be. I'm leaning toward Bowie, to be honest. Except when he sang, because the only thing is that I'm kind of worried that my second favorite character was going after some forbidden fruit, if you know what I mean, and then that's not okay. And then he becomes my least favorite character. Yeah, it seemed a little bit like he had a little bit of a romantic interest in her, and he just didn't, they just didn't want to go that route quite yet. You know what I mean? And in another time and place, it wouldn't have, ever been an issue. Like, she's 16, he's 35, not a problem. He's the king.
Well, it also depends on what state she's from. That might not have been a problem.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The age of consent is low as 14.
It's
as low as 14 in some places in the United States and Germany. So
15.
Yeah, in Germany, this is just another reason why I don't like Germany.
Yeah, it's 14.
No, I'm talking about here in America, there, Jack. It's 15
I know that.
Down in Florida.
Yeah, he said. I forgot if it was you or my dad said in Germany it's 14, and I just the reason.
And I think Alabama or somewhere in the South.
Probably Alabama.
Or Tennessee, or I'm not sure. I don't really want to know because being too accurate on that information, gets you on a watch list of my watch list. Because if you're, if that's where you're looking for the future Mrs. So and so, you are not okay. Not okay.
When it comes to the characters, I kind of like Hoggle.
I didn't like him at all. I kind of like the big fuzzy guy better.
What are you gonna say there, Jack?
He was all right.
I'll admit
he was the one character with the most growth from beginning to end. Next to the girl, what was her name again?
Her character's name was Sarah.
Oh yeah.
Because actually, why do I remember? I don't know. I just remember that actually. Yeah.
It's like being the oldest of 3 siblings, there was many evenings I was stuck at home to watch my brothers while my mom and stepdad decided they wanted to go out. Granted, none of them were babies, thank God. But I can understand her resentment of having to stay in because of having to watch a kid,
Yeah, it was kind of weird because I'm guessing she was like 16 and the baby brother was like 1.
Yeah, the baby brother
that's a big chunk of years that went by without her parents having more kids, which is kind of weird. It's not normal. It's not so much weird. It's unusual.
The baby was her half brother. So resentment on top of resentment, then where's the mom been in? She looks oddly familiar. I'm looking at her. She appeared in Trailer Park Boys. That's wonderful. Okay, so outside of the main cast, David Bowie's character was just fun. I thought he would make, if you take out the sexual innuendos that they had in the movie, which were coming from both sides, not even sexual, they were just romantic innuendos. I mean, there was nothing.
Yeah, because it did look like for a second there, she wasn't 100% opposed to that idea.
Well, in the beginning of the book, she was reading about him in some novel or reading about him in some book. So whatever fantasy she had in her head about him, I mean, it's not uncommon, especially at that age, for the person you read about it, be more idyllic than the people you know.
Right.
That is sadly correct.
And especially a hormone. I mean, that works for both guys and girls. I mean, if you're 16 years old and your favorite actress is on the movie, you're thinking about all the things and places you'll go with them and things that you do, and vice versa. It's not uncommon. I love David Bowie's character and the pretense that he was just. I think he'd be a fun villain to play as a DM.
Right, but he was a little too not evil enough, if that makes any sense.
Well, you want to go to the heavy extreme evil.
Right. The guy who thinks that the only way to actually be evil is to be full-on child raping mass murderer Hitler.
Well, right, but that's not the only way. That's not the only way. But it is a way.
Right. I mean, there's many shades of evil, and this one was just more of I kidnap babies and turn them into goblins.
Oh, also, can we talk about
that? I don't even know that was his goal. You know what I mean? If the author came to me and told me that no, he's actually chaotic neutral, I'd be like, okay, I see it. Fair enough. I could have seen that.
What are you gonna say there, Jack?
Nothing. There's a scene that I want to talk about. We'll get there later.
I actually don't know if he was evil. Now that I'm sort of thinking about it.
Right. I mean, it was a kids' movie, so they had to be kid friendly, and maybe that was the point. He was just a bad guy, but not a really really bad guy enough to be as bad bad to the bone.
Right. I mean, if they made this, and I hope that they don't, but like nothing is sacred in Hollywood anymore. Well, nothing's ever been sacred in Hollywood to begin with. But if they remade this movie, it's not the Labyrinth without David Bowie. You could change everybody else out.
Yep. And I was very impressed. I know David Bowie could possibly have been the guy, juggling the crystal balls most of the time. They probably had some sort of actual professional juggler doing the handwork. But whoever that guy was, that was very, interesting.
So
Yeah.
they would have
It took some actual skill for that.
right.
It did. What also took skill was when he was throwing the baby in the air, because they definitely had to do that scene multiple times, and they definitely had to mop up the remains of the failed scenes.
Right. The juggling thing, I was watching a behind the scenes thing about the juggling. They literally had this guy standing right behind him.
Yeah, I noticed that a couple of times, especially when he was sitting down and the guy's arm was coming up from underneath. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's how they did that one.
But once again, this is practical magic movies. This is before we could just do it with the computer. Why should let's be lazy. I shouldn't say it's
Right.
lazy, but
It's not
It's
lazy.
flaw-
It
it's
doesn't work
just
down.
flawless.
Well, I used to think that, oh, why would you animate? That's just laziness. But
oh no, I know
it
there's a
does
lot
take
of work.
a lot of work to do that. It takes a lot of work to animate it, but it most likely takes a lot more work to do it physically. That's why they do it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've only seen maybe one other person in my entire life that can move a crystal ball like that, and I'm not that person. I have great big meat hands.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of the music?
There was one or two songs I didn't hate, and a couple, one or two that were like, oh, that's cute, okay, whatever, But there were a couple that I'm like, little cringy, and those pink guys, that scene with the guys taking off their heads and stuff. That song was just like awful, just absolutely awful. But I did notice that Danny John Jules from Red Dwarf, who played the cat, was one of them, or one of the voices I'm going with. He could have been one of the like a person in costume, because he was a well-known dancer, singer, etc. before Red Dwarf. So I'm not really sure which way that went, but it was that song was just absolutely awful.
Let's see.
I don't know if it was the first song, but the one where they're singing about the baby. Remember that one?
You remind me of the Bay.
Yeah, I think so. When David Bowie was throwing the baby in the air, he most likely missed. They had to do that scene at least 2 times, and they probably had to mop up each failed baby.
God, it's so dark.
That's bad. See,
But
it's funny that you bring up that song. You remind "Dance Magic Dance" is actually the name of the song. That is the most quotable line from the entire movie. That whole song, I know it almost by heart. And when my daughter was a baby, I used to hold her and actually do that. You remind me of the babe. And I'd move my thumb over her mouth and make her, puppet her, say, "What, babe?" So this movie has, like I said in the very beginning, this is one of my favorite 80s fantasy movies. This is just good family friendly fantasy.
The Henson people did a bang up job the very beginning when the goblins were waiting for the girl to say the magic words. I was getting into it. They're not TSR goblins or whatever you want to call it. Fantasy goblins, the way I pictured them, but they weren't like just god awful. Some things have been in the past. Nothing comes to mind from this movie, but it was. I was going, okay, this could be good. This could be good. I was, a little wrong, but it's not going to enter my top 20 favorite movies ever. But this is. I'm going to count this as the first time I've seen it. To be honest.
Yeah.
I know I saw bits and pieces of it growing up, but I can't say that I remember more than 1% of it from when I was a kid.
Well, there's aspects of this movie I definitely would throw into a D&D fantasy, like for example, the Bog of Internal Stench.
Yep, that was pretty nasty. I I definitely knew exactly what that smelled like. If you've ever been in a porta potty in August anywhere on the planet, you know what that smell is.
Yeah. Mid-June. Oh my God. Just like taking a crap. Never mind.
That is precisely that smell. There's.
Man. I see. I mean, it didn't really cover like any of the basic four groups when it comes to like a straight D&D fantasy, but I figured they covered. You had your two melee fighters. You had your rogue, which was Hoggle, and you had whatever the hell she was.
She was the princess.
Then the princess and the fox.
The damsel in distress.
Right. And the fox
was a cavalier, not necessarily a paladin, but definitely a cavalier or knight.
Yeah.
And I forget the big guy's name. He was just, a fuzzy Andre the Giant, if you will, with a little bit of, fear thrown in there. He was afraid of a lot of things. He was just a cute character, and I felt a little sorry for him at times, but I knew exactly where that character was going to go from beginning to end. Unlike Andre the Giant when we were watching Princess Bride, Andre did kind of grow a little. This guy was, he was stuck.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. Not in a bad way.
I would say he's a fighter. I mean, he wasn't a barbarian.
No. Well, maybe. I mean, he was just a big, low intelligence creature guy, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
Clearly, sentient, more than animal intelligent life form, and he was, he was fun, and
Now, go for it.
No, that's it. I didn't want to go on and on about it, but he was just generally lovable character.
Yeah.
Now, what about the labyrinth itself and all the critters that was in the labyrinth? I like the worm.
The worm was cute. I really liked. We both liked the eyeballs that were all over the place. I was just absolutely loved that.
The eyeballs.
The little they were almost like mushroom worm things in clumps here and there, and there was eyeballs. Yeah. I was like, loving that. Beholder anywhere in this dungeon? Let's hope so. There were a lot of scenes of it, like when the worm told her, it's right there. The doorway's right there, and it was. But all you had to do was just look at it from just a slightly left or right angle, and you'd see the difference. I thought that was fantastic. The brickwork was excellent. The floor that kept popping up and changing every time she did the lipstick, I hated that. One time, okay, but every single time, that was just, it was one of those jokes that fell flat for me.
Well, I think it was less of a, I guess the first time maybe, but the other times it was very obviously deliberate.
Yeah, it was just kind of too deliberate, kind of too
an accident. But every other time it was obviously she put something to mark the way, and then it changes it so that she keeps going her own way.
Well, it's supposed to be
it did remind me. It did remind me of the scene or the image in the player's handbook where someone's using rope to keep track of their. Here, let me just get it. It's really easy. I love this image from the original player's handbook.
Okay. Let me enlarge the screen so people at home can actually see that.
Okay.
It's hard to see because your camera's kind of bad, but
yeah, the fighter is laying out a string so it's not lost in like a troll or whatever the hell that creature is.
That's
the troll is winding the string right back up.
Yep. so that the guy is going to get lost. Like all the troll has to do is just attack him, and it's pretty much curtains for that poor fighter in traditional D&D. And it wasn't it wasn't just because of the regeneration qualities of a troll back then. It was just the hit points and attacks. That alone would put you in grave danger in a good D&D 4th or 5th level adventure.
Wouldn't all you need to
Mark says, I was thinking of the PC who was smart enough to buy chalk.
Yep.
I mean, couldn't you just go all the way back and then cut the rope far enough away so that it can never see that it's been cut, but that he's constantly dragging it and it just keeps going, so he could get there and then it's gone.
Oh, there's many ways of doing that. I mean, technically, you could have set the very end of it on fire, and if he's so far forward, he would never see the slow burn.
Yeah, Troll's not going to be doing that, though.
Right, because of fire. No, I get what you're saying. But, the lipstick thing, I didn't see that as a joke. I just saw that as the Labyrinth saying, no, you're not going to be able to do this. And fucking with her. Messing with her, I'm sorry. So I didn't see it as a joke, more as just as a... being a DM, I just thought it was a mechanic of the Labyrinth to make sure people get back.
Except for the fact, here's the thing. Except for the fact that every time she did it on a stone slab that was about a foot by a foot perfect. She did it on that one, and that was the one that would perfectly lift up and
I think
change.
We could all lift up.
Maybe.
We also saw how he pulled up a wooden board, put it up against the wall, and then just opened it. And then there was nothing there, so he closed it and then opened it from the other side.
The broom closet, his broom closet, he called it.
Yeah, that's not how anything works.
Well, that's how fantasy works. That's how fantasy works.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
There's no way that.
Although that would make for an interesting magic item, a small wooden door that affixes to a wall and will open up into two different locations, one being your broom closet, aka a portable hole or bag of holding device, and then the other one would lead you to some other place.
Right.
So I like that.
There's a lot of the small mechanics that they use in this one.
Another one that had the thing that happened right after the faces in the stone that we're talking. I absolutely want to steal that, but it's going to have to be many years down the road before I can actually steal that.
The door knockers?
No, not the door knockers. The faces in the walls that were saying, "Don't go this way. You're going the wrong way." I thought that was really well done and a little bit amusing. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, that was good. I like the door knockers.
Yep, that was. I like that too, especially when it was the ears and the mouth thing, keeping them from being able. It was a little bit Dante's Inferno-ish. Two guys stuck sitting next to each other, can't talk to each other because one can't talk and the other can't hear. That was, kind of, like I said, it reminded me a little of something you might find in Dante's Inferno. A little sad, little cruel, for the poor guys.
Wasn't that
which is weird to say.
Dante's Inferno, though?
Yeah, they did remind me a little of the Magic Mouth, but it's just a little twist on it, because clearly whoever wrote Labyrinth had played a little bit of D&D or seen it played enough to get some of the more common tropes of, the 70s up to the time of the making of the movie. There had to have been some people role-playing Dungeons and Dragons at that specific time to be able to, pull those things off. Maybe they didn't, but I'm not buying it.
Well, on the webpage I'm looking at, Jim Henson said, I was thinking that we are trying to do with this film is kind of a harken back to a lot of those classic fantasy adventures that a young girl goes into, the Wizard of
Yeah, like Wizard of
Oz.
Oz and Snow White.
Alice in
Yeah, I saw those.
Version where
Yep,
Wizard of Oz.
definitely. If it was more like that, I could see that because of the books that were on her table, especially Alice in Wonderland. There was a lot of that in it.
Yeah, that was another one. And the work of that's a name I can't produce. Let's say. I'll type in chat.
Which I will never see, but that's
I
okay.
will tell. What I'll do is I'll type it in chat and I'll put it on the screen.
Okay. Otherwise, I won't know what the heck you're talking about. Which that's kind of a common reoccurring.
Well, no, I can see the text. I can see the comments because
I'm just messing with Connell.
Well, I know, but you actually can't see the comments.
Well, okay, hold on. Okay, you can understand me clearly, right? Or do I need to turn it up?
Yeah, a little louder. Turn it up a little more. There you go. There you go.
Oh God, it's funny. I get along with you better than I do my own siblings.
Oh, because I don't know. They play D.
They're just asshats. Marcus Morris.
Oh, Maurice Sendak. Yeah, that's he wrote Where the Wild Things Are.
Okay. I messed up on his name.
Come on, that is one of the most classic children's books. If you don't read that book to your child, you are a bad parent.
Just don't let them watch the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean it's like what 15 pages, maybe 20 pages, with 2 sentences on each page, and sometimes 2 sentences every other page. That is that's a classic. You absolutely must read that to your children.
So it's a mixture of Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz,
and Where the Wild Things Are,
and a sprinkling of Grimm's fairy tales was the overall theme of this.
Yeah, I can see that with the Goblin King, him being a villain from that as opposed to Alice in Wonderland, but maybe not. And the Maurice Sendak, that makes sense with the big fuzzy guy. I mean, he was one of those guys Where the Wild Things Are. I mean, he was just they just hired him off the set of Where the Wild Things Are, even though the movie wouldn't be made for 20 more years or more. But yeah, that's all that was. But it was, I don't know why I didn't even think of that while watching it. But yeah, absolutely, that's what that was. Now,
after we're talking about this, does it move up on your list anymore, or is it still solid in the back 30?
Oh no, it's still, I would give it a 6 or a 7. I'm glad I got to see it. I wish I would have seen it more as a kid, at least seen it once as a kid, to be able to have that nostalgic, thing going on when we were watching it.
Yeah.
But it was definitely what?
It would have been better if my dad's meth lab didn't have its door open.
What the hell are you talking about? The FBI is going to be here in like 8 minutes. And I'm just going to point to you.
California there's a news report I saw earlier today saying that it was a major flood coming to California. They don't care.
Yeah, well, hey, you know what? We live in the high desert. We're stopped.
So you might be getting beachfront property.
Winning.
Yay.
And not only do we live in the high desert, but we're in a valley up in the high desert. So not only would the water have to rise, but then it would have to rise above. It would have to rise above the mountains that surround us, and then come back down to get us. We're good.
Yeah, I mean, we live in this small little town up in the mountains. It's cool.
Is it where they filmed You Can't Buy Me Love?
I don't know.
I don't know what that is, but I know apparently the area where they filmed this one scene in, was it Star Trek? Was filmed in
Star Trek and Bill and Ted's.
Oh, and Big Bang Theory. Yeah, the cliff. Yeah.
It's not as close as we originally thought when I believe it was Shauner mentioned it or told us. It's not as close as you thought, but it's still pretty close.
Actually, I was talking about that to my aunt a couple days ago because we went to California when I was a kid. We went. My uncle's a doctor and he had a convention out there, so we went to California. We went to like Disneyland, and my uncle's a big Star Trek fan. So there's a picture of me. They have a picture of me at that place.
That's cool.
I sure as shit don't remember it.
Right. I know what you mean. Actually, not really. I actually have a really good memory when it comes to certain events in my life. I can literally remember as a child climbing out a window, wearing a diaper, climbing out a window when we lived in these apartments, wearing my diaper and just my diaper, and getting on my big wheel and riding around in the apartment complex. And obviously my mom, eventually found me, and she was freaking out, because the window's open and the kid's gone. What 1.5-year-old kid, can open a window and climb out, but apparently I could.
Yeah.
There's something that
I've seen this story before.
I remember going to Disneyland. I remember my aunt taking a picture of me with a stand-up cardboard cutout of Tom Selleck. There's certain things I remember about California, but there's a lot that I don't. It just all kind of smudged into one memory. It's like I saw Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory and Never Ending Story for the first time out in California.
Do you remember the first movie you ever saw?
Yes.
In the theater?
Yes.
What was it?
Aliens.
John Carter, Jackie. It was John Carter.
No, I know what it is because you tell me every single day. I just have no memory of it.
Okay. My very first movie
I
going
remember
experience.
my mom was watching it in Spanish, and I just sat down like, oh, this seems like a cool movie. But I didn't really know what was going on because it was already halfway over. And it's like, oh, this guy, he's on like a desert world and these green people. But because I didn't even know what the Tharks looked like in the movie. I'd seen the miniatures and stuff, but obviously they don't look that similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, wait, because I think the big scene with the monkeys already happened.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of the best part of the movie in a lot of ways.
And I go, this is a good movie. What was it? And my mom says that it was John Carter, and the next day I immediately rewatch it.
My first movie experience was the Disney cartoon of Robin Hood.
Robin Hood was a communist.
Yeah, he's British, so I can't even stand up for him.
Robin Hood was cool as shit.
The concept of Robin Hood was awesome. The fantasized version of Robin Hood is amazing. The real Robin Hood, we don't know.
Exactly. I won't debate that at all. He was just growing up as a kid. He was one of my first literary heroes. That's why Hawkeye was my favorite superhero. My first favorite superhero. Hey, what's happening, man? Great having you on last night. Looking forward to your first show because I really do want to talk about the stuff that we didn't talk about last night.
I'd like to talk about that stuff too.
Yeah, last night was an amazing
8 hours stream.
Yeah, it was 8 hours, and I got kicked off twice. Rick.
You're a child. It happens.
I know.
But there's a lot of things in the Labyrinth I would definitely use in. I bet you do, Nathan. He said I got more to say on the topic that we talked about last night, or we're going to talk about last night.
Can't wait.
Neither can I. But you take out the characters and you use the Labyrinth as a map, as a working map. And I believe Labyrinth should have the ability the walls should be able to move. It's a living. It's a living.
That reminds me of the actual greatest scene in the movie, which was when they get to the gates and the big robot shows up.
Oh yeah, no
Netflix?
kidding. I'm stealing that. Oh yeah, I am stealing that.
And on the topic of the best scene, I'm going to explain why the worst scene of the movie is the worst scene. So, you know when she does the whole, like, I'm so smart, I have figured out how to find the right door. And she walks in and she falls into that pit with all the holes, and all the hands. That's the worst scene. And I'm going to explain why. The reason why is because I had that almost exact same idea once before. And because I'm obsessed with originality, I am now going to denounce that scene forever.
I think it's novel. I think if you're doing a campaign or whatever, and the person falls down the pit and it's caught by a series of hands, and some of the hands have to come together to make eyes and to make a face and talk.
I know, because I've done that. Well, they fall down, but having hands form faces is something I've not only done multiple times. It's just I liked the idea, so I used it. But I watched this movie and saw that same thing. I don't know.
Well, I hate to say this, but under the pretense of being original, there's only so many mediums you can still be original in, and movies is really hard to be one of them.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you could be original with food. People are coming up with new variations.
Yeah, we just came up with this abomination a few weeks ago, and it's one of the best foods I've ever had.
What was it?
It was 2 long pieces of bread with completely mashed up chicken with mayonnaise mixed in, then lettuce, and then the Fritos.
Oh, I can see that being good.
And
your dad talked about his pizza doing on French bread. I'm like, that's amazing. That's going to be a thing.
It has been. It has been a thing for a long time. I didn't make that up. That there back in the '80s and stuff. I would go to a restaurant and get French bread pizza all the time. It was it's lovely.
Mark wants to know. Let me ask the group, Mark. Mark wishes to know if he can join the panel.
Sure.
I don't see why not.
All right. Well, the answer to that, Mark, is yes. I don't want to say yes for the rest of the group.
Are you kidding? Mark's a great guy. That's it. I mean, and like last night, I got to meet Wesley face to face. He'd been hanging out with our channel for a while, and even though he was, a bit quiet from time to time, whenever he said something, I'm just like, we could definitely be friends.
I liked him. There wasn't anybody on last night's chat that I would not spend hours talking to.
What'd you think of Armstrong?
Well, you did spend hours talking to them. It was
I liked them all.
Real quick, not to sidetrack the show, but how long did you stay on after I left?
Probably another half an hour.
Okay, Mark, good to finally meet you face to face, buddy. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Mark, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Great to meet you face to face, man.
Good to meet you.
You've actually helped us out quite a bit, between the audio books and hanging out with us, all this time, and especially being here on the Sunday show like a regular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you at work? Mark, are you at work?
Yeah, I'm at work right now. Getting ready to leave in a little bit over an hour. What?
Oh.
I was going to say I appreciate you reading the Dresden books with us, and just keep going on with whatever topic that we're decided to talk about that the coming week or month. Yeah. So, what is your opinion of the Dresden Files so far?
Mark?
He said, hold on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, maybe that's it now. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I had YouTube still open, and I think it was getting
Oh yeah. You gotta do that.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, you'll get the
Yeah.
infinite echo.
yeah. I've enjoyed.
Nobody liked.
the
Well, I
Dresden-
like them, but I'm the only person I see this.
I've enjoyed the Dresden so far. What I've read, I kind of like describing some of the scenes, places, and stuff I recognize. I live pretty close to Chicago, so some of that stuff I recognize. And then there was a couple spots he was mentioning, like East Chicago, when he mentioned Wolf Lake and one with the werewolves and vampires, and that's actually that's probably Wolf Lake and East Chicago are probably maybe 30 minutes away from where I live. Those places are actually in Indiana. Wolf Lake is an actual lake in Indiana. It's in northern part of Hammond, Indiana. So
Right. Yeah, I'm in Illinois myself. I lived up in Chicago proper for about a year, long enough to understand what winter is like up in Chicago off of Lake Michigan, and there was a whole lot of fuck that.
Yeah.
Never again.
Yeah, I went to
But,
Chicago in November in 2017, and while it did snow a lot, and luckily I was asleep the entire time, so I didn't have to deal with any of that. So it melted all in one day.
The next book on the Dresden Files I think we're getting to is Summer Night, which is also another fun one. I like Jim Butcher. Jim Butcher, he has some mistakes he's done in this book. I'm not going to argue with that one with Shadow, but when he does the layout, when he does the actual city layout, he seems to be mostly on point.
yeah, for the most part, I would say so. Other than what that guy was paying for rent, I would like to know where he was saying it was only like $500 or something like that, and he sounds like he's living in pretty much in the heart of the city. And I don't know about all that, even 20 years ago, but that's neither here nor there, I guess.
That artistic license, I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Because I know what I was paying for, and I was sharing an apartment with 4 other guys, and I was still shelling out almost $1,000 a month.
Yeah,
Wow.
I lived
in
in the south side of Chicago for a couple years, and I was late 90s. I was paying $550, $600 for a upper level of a 2 flat. So yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think that until I find out otherwise, that these books have to take place, quite a while ago.
Well, they're modern time. I mean, it's modern time. I mean,
I get it, but it just seems very difficult for that to be the case sometimes.
Then again, at the same time, you could find if you're renting a place from some person that they will, if it's an old lady or whatever, they will cut the rate. It does happen. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's an individual person,
they don't do the research, and they think, oh gosh, I'm asking so much.
Yeah, he did
Yeah,
say
but
he was more or less
Chicago
living in the basement too. So
yeah, he was living in the basement of a basement. I mean,
yeah. So, but yeah, I'm enjoying the book so far. Yeah, I like it. It's a fun little. I guess that'd be like. I guess you'd probably call it like urban fantasy, maybe. I guess for the genre, but yeah.
Yeah. So, have you seen the movie The Labyrinth?
Yeah, I watched it. Actually, for whatever reason, it flew under my radar. I watched it for the first time yesterday, and I was probably what this movie came out in '86, so I was 12 or 13 when it came out. But I don't know why. I just one of those I never watched until then. And when I saw it was executive producer was George Lucas, I was like, whoa, what the? I was as a kid, so. Yeah, that kind of threw me for. I was like, "What? How did I miss this?" But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed all the set pieces and the puppets, and I could see the evolution even from because I think Dark Crystal came out in early '80s, and this was 4 or 5 years after Dark Crystal, so I saw the evolution of the puppets from even that to this movie, but I enjoyed it and I enjoyed the story for what it was. It was a cute little movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those movies that you should probably see at least once.
Mm-hmm.
I went into it thinking, I'm gonna hate this, but I'll give it a solid 6.5, 7 out of 10, maybe higher.
You know, yeah.
Would you give it a higher rating, Jack?
All right, with the drugs in the air, it was like a 6. Without them, it'd probably be like an 8.
I don't know what he's talking about, folks. There's no drugs in this household.
Well, other than the
Unless you're talking about you having a cigarette.
No, his meth. He does have a meth lab. It's how he gets all of his ideas.
Your dad's gonna come down and beat you.
Oh, hey, you know what? It is time for intermission for me. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, technically it is.
But no, I love movies. I love movies that still uses practical magic in the movie.
Or used.
Yeah. So Jim Henson, anything that has Jim Henson name on it, for the most part, I'll watch it. And I'm actually gone to the Jim Henson. I'm looking at the Jim Henson Creature Shop and looking at all the movies they've done. And I mean, they're working on Five Nights at Freddy.
Oh. I thought that was canceled like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
I doubt it. Every time we go into Walmart, and because we always, go through the toy section, just, to see if there's anything cool, even though,
No, it's the toy X section.
Right, he calls it the X section.
No, my
that's
mom.
how he pronounced it. Right. Because that's how the little guy pronounced it when he was like 3 or 4. And there's still Five Nights at Freddy's stuff that's brand new in the store. So they probably will do that movie at some point. And
well, I thought it was canceled 4 years ago, and then I heard that it was still being made. But then I thought it was canceled again when everybody tried to kill the creator or whatever happened. And then I thought, oh, it's actually still a thing. It's been, I don't know. But yeah, I thought it's dead. Probably is dead, but it's not finished.
Yeah, I have to look into that one. I've never been a big fan of Five Nights at Freddy fan. But Mark, do you play Dungeons and Dragons? I mean, do you do fantasy RPG?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is kind of where we're at right now. I mean,
what's your game of choice? What's your game of choice?
All right, I was into it in the early '80s up through the early '90s, and I had been out of it until 2014, and 5e brought me back into it. But I'm getting very burnt out on 5e, and I'm looking to go back to either I want to go with OSE, which is more or less BX. I think BX is the best version of D&D, even better than First Ed in my opinion. But or Tunnels and Trolls. I really not Tunnels and Trolls. Castles and Crusades.
Castles and Crusades.
Yeah, see, I'm always going to have that issue with race as class. I always preferred, being, having a lot more choice when it came to elves and dwarves and gnomes and that sort of thing. It just, other than that, to me, that's like almost the only difference that's measurable for me. I know there's other things.
Right.
And BX or the Rules Encyclopedia really does have it all in one handy book. But unfortunately, the drive-through version, the pages are all screwy in the page numbers. Because it's literally like, there's like several page number 1 in the book because it's all the books put together. And I would have really appreciated had they put the Immortals rules in it, because I love those rules. Other than that, they're like the same game.
Yeah. when you're talking about races class, OSE has an advanced edition of OSE, and they have more races in it, and they don't allow them to do every class, but they do allow, like, for the elves and dwarves they have rules so they can play some other classes.
Right, and I'm okay with the racial limitations. A gnome can't be a paladin, as we hear so often. That's fine, but at the same time, the more I've been thinking about it, I'm like, it's not such a big deal that, if you want your world to have gnomish paladins.
Yeah, you could just do it. I don't see what it would hurt.
Yeah, I don't think that you should.
Think it would break anything, really.
But at the same time, there are some things like dwarven wizards. I'm like, no, I don't think there should be. Here's the caveat to that. If you want to allow in your game someone to be the first dwarven wizard, that would be kind of a cool story for everybody involved. Here's the first dwarf who's finally going to be able to be a wizard. You know what I'm saying? I could see that as being perfectly acceptable.
I would rather have a dwarf wizard than anything sorcerer.
Well, here's the thing. When I hear sorcerer, I know they turned it into something different for third or fourth or fifth edition. But sorcerer was just another word for wizard for me.
Well,
and it's always going to be that for me. They wanted to branch out and make more classes, because if you literally went through the old player's handbooks, it's like, I happen to have it right here. Back in the old days, every level had a title. Okay, so when you became a magic user, you started out as a prestidigitator, then an evoker, a conjurer, a thurgerist, etc., magician, warlock, sorcerer, necromancer, and then at 11th level you're a wizard. Well, that implied at 10th level you're a necromancer. What? Suddenly I get a bunch of necromancy spells? No, that never happened in AD&D. Okay, but in second edition they just took all that and turned it into basically 10 different kinds of magic user. Which, okay, you want to have the specialist? That's cool. Same thing with the thief. There was 9 different titles for thief. What, you're going to make 9 different thief professions? So you're going to end up with 40 different professions based on just the 4 food groups: cleric, fighter, magic user, thief. That's just way too much bull crap. You just don't need.
I was say this last night in chat. I think I said this after you left. But 3.5, Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 had so much stuff in it that was absolutely crazy. There was like over 30 different books that could be used for your campaign. And I always joke that I don't need 15 books to make one character, but it's kind of cool that I can use 15 books to make one character.
AD&D second edition had the same thing. First edition, not so much, but there were always places you could go, even from AD&D and Beckme, etc. Dragon Magazine always had new things. If you kept up on the magazine and some of the other products that were out there, every version of D&D has had, a stack of paper, is, a yard tall. If you're to pull out all the lore and all the information that you could find that had been printed by TSR or some other companies that was all usable and perfectly legit in the Dungeons and Dragons game mindset, regardless of what edition, there was a crap ton of stuff you could find. But yet there are people out there that are only using the original, white box edition, and that's all they have, and that's all they're ever going to use. To this day, there's people out there that started with white box and are still playing white box. Same thing with every edition after that. Use what you want, enjoy the game. If you can pull stuff from other sources like we're doing tonight or this afternoon by watching an old fantasy movie and looking for, choice little bits that we can go, I'm stealing that because I saw at least 3 things I'm going to steal from this movie at some point in the future. And people go, oh, legend. I'm like, yeah, fuck you. the creepy tunnel of hands. Oh my God, that's nightmarish. That was the creepiest thing in
yeah,
this
that
whole
was-
movie.
Seeing the movie, they stole my idea.
Actually,
Yeah.
you stole their idea considering the timeline.
That was
I get that, but I came up with the idea before I've seen this movie, so
Yeah, that
Well,
doesn't
wasn't
count
that-
in the court of law.
that was
The door golem. That was
yeah,
ingenious.
the door
The
golem.
door
is-
golem. I would do it differently. Because once the door golem leaves the door, how do you open the door? You got to find a way to get him back to the door. How do you do that crap? He's trying to kill you, and you can't get out of the room until you figure out how to put the door golem back into the door. That's going to be a blast. I don't know when I'll get to use it, but
I love the door golem. They do that. The goblins in the machine do whatever they're doing. It's like just no, and just the voices. I like. There's not much from that movie that I could not use in the D&D campaign. I granted there are a few things I would definitely not use in the D&D. The birds, the birds that would take off their heads and throw them around. I could just scrap that. I take that little aspect, throw it in the trash, and be done with it. That was just annoying as hell.
Right, but you have to understand that type of puppetry comes from kabuki theater. That there are actually people behind the puppets moving them. They're wearing the puppets. As far as I can tell, that's how that was done. And that's been a Jim Henson thing also in various productions of things that they've made back in the day, as well as other people, even in vaudeville and things like that. There were people in the black suit and wearing the puppet or the bones on their outside. That's where the skeleton costume comes from that we all know as kids,
Yeah.
where it was just the bones on a black suit. In the old days, it was the bones like glued or sewed onto the black suit to make it look more scary.
It's not
So I appreciate that, but the song was just, there was something about that song, the way it was like off key or off. I don't know if you guys remember or noticed it. There was something about that song that was like disjointed. It's hard to explain, but it was just like messing with my nervous system because it wasn't right. There was something that was wrong about that song, and I can't put my finger on it, but I know that they went out of their way to make this song that was like just, it was almost like, watching, Seizure Bots or something like that. You're watching it and you're about ready to have a seizure because of the flashing lights, but it was audio.
Yeah, I didn't care for that scene whatsoever. I didn't enjoy it the first time I saw it, and enjoy it the last time I saw it. I'm like, I could do it. I appreciate the work that went into the scene, but I don't like this scene.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that second word scene.
It's like the ball. The ballroom was absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Between the garb, the music, the costumes, the music, the dancing, and everything. There was a lot in that.
Yep, they put a lot into that scene. Absolutely.
That they did. It was just kind of weird for me. Don't know exactly what it was.
Probably the fact that all of a sudden there are, for the most part, humans in this world, dancing, having a ball.
Weird masks.
Right.
Well, it was a masquerade ball. I mean,
Sure. But it was just it was just a weird choice. In the long run, it probably was cheaper than trying to have a room full of puppets moving around. With great. But that's the scene that I was watching, noticing that she was dancing with the Goblin King and not like, pushing away. She's like, doing it, and most little girls would be like, "Get away from me!" You groom her.
But she wasn't a little girl. She was 16 years old.
Still, many girls today would be like, absolutely no. I don't care if you're David Bowie.
I don't know about that.
Well,
Having
okay,
a daughter,
back in that
I
day
don't
when
know.
David Bowie was like huge, you're right. Back when Bowie was huge,
Yeah.
sure. But you pick some random dude that the girls don't know and say, we're going to dance.
Well,
They're
remember,
going to be
she
like,
was reading about her. She had the
right,
book.
right. That's why I was saying earlier that I think, had things been different, she might have, stayed with the Goblin King and lived happily ever after. Had he been not such a douchebag.
I like the. I don't care much. Well, I
the
don't
main
mind the
character
song.
Seems to come from the. Well, what is that? What is that group of people called that read romance novels? She seems to come from that group.
Okay.
That sect of society.
There's
Right, I know what you're talking
there's nothing wrong with romance novels. Don't shame anybody on their reading choices.
I don't think he is. I think he's just being technical. I'm going to be right back. I have
Yeah,
to
that
do
is
something real quick.
exactly.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, as long as people read, I don't really care what they read. What about you? What's your favorite part?
Mein Kampf for George Orwell.
What is your Mark? What is your favorite part of the movie? What I mean, if you had one part, what part did you enjoy?
I think the part that really hit it home for me and kind of addressed the time that it was done in was the whole. I don't know if we want to wait for Shadow to get back and what his thoughts are on it, but when she was in the junkyard with those creatures that were hoarders,
Yeah.
and they're trying to distract her with all the junk, piling more and more junk on her and getting her wrapped up in things instead of realizing what the bigger picture is. Finding her little brother and the importance of family and stuff like that. And I don't know if that was supposed to be, a comment of the way things were in the 80s or not, but that's kind of what I got out of that. Was a good scene to me, an important scene, I thought.
It was. I mean, she was selfish in the very beginning of the movie. She was a normal teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in the beginning, at least, every character was evil except the dog.
And she wanted her stuff to be a certain way. She didn't want. I have no idea how her younger Toby got into her room and messed with her stuff. It being Toby being like maybe a year and a half year old child.
I don't know how he even got up there.
Now, do you think that the Goblin King was really actually evil though? I don't get the feeling that he necessarily was.
If I had to put a alignment on him,
or at least that they were talking about earlier. I didn't say. Actually, I don't remember what I said there, but they were definitely talking about that earlier in the stream.
Yeah, if I had to put alignment on the Goblin King, it would probably be chaotic neutral at the heaviest. I mean, I'd say chaotic neutral because he wasn't really evil. He didn't outrightly hurt anybody. I mean, he kicked a goblin, but it's a goblin. They don't have rights.
Exactly.
And he was good to the child. I mean, he was legitimately good to the child.
From throwing the child in the air like 10 feet.
See, you don't understand. When you become a father.
No, I know that.
I used to throw my daughter up in the air and catch her.
No, I know that. Everybody does that. That's not what I said.
You're just concerned about all the dead splat babies that are on the floor when filming. I understand.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But I thought that I really appreciated that. There was tons of them. I thought everything was real clever. The sets, the costuming. I mean that design for those characters was just with all the junk piled on them. It was just great. I thought it was just great.
What I remember from the 80s was the 80s was definitely the era of excess. You want the big houses. You want everything. Parents that had their parents were children of the Great Depression. So they were poor as a kid. Now they got these jobs where they can afford big houses, big cars, fast cars, and so forth and so on. There was definitely the 80s was definitely the era of excess. And that junkyard scene is very much of that, opinion of that
Yeah.
area. Now, Jim Henson, as a person, I don't think much of him as a person, but him as a philosopher in the sense of the way he did his movies, I think is absolutely brilliant. It being Dark Crystal, The Labyrinth. Hell, I love him for the fact that he helped make Ninja Turtles the 1990s movie. I mean, I don't know how old you are, Mark, but I grew up on the Ninja Turtles, so
Yeah, I'm kind of old. I'm almost 50, so yeah.
yeah. So I appreciate everything that his studio has done and has continued to do over the years as moving The Labyrinth. And I said this before, it's just for what the time that it was for the 80s, it was just a great fantasy movie. I mean, I'm not saying that the Legends was bad, and I'm not saying Dark Crystal was bad, and the other handful of fantasy movies are out there. But realistically, if you want to sit down with a child and say, hey, you want to watch a fantasy movie,
Yeah,
this is it.
This would be a great one for that.
I don't know which movies did you just mention that I missed? Legend, Dark Crystal, what else?
Legends, Dark Crystal, this movie. I said Ninja Turtles, but Ninja Turtles is sci-fi, not fantasy. But no, I'm just saying this one right here is one of those movies, and I'll say it again, it was one of those movies you can plop your kids down on the couch and get some popcorn or whatever and sit down and watch a family-friendly fantasy movie without the 101 different questions I don't want them to ask about.
Right.
Where Legend, Tom Cruise, Tim Curry, and I can't remember the woman's name, is like a high school fantasy movie. In my mind, I mean,
it was a little, yeah. The age requirement should be just a tad higher than this one.
Yeah, I mean, Dark Crystal is another good kid movie. I mean, it's freaking dark as hell. Once if you start reading behind the lines and everything, between the lines, holy shit, it's horrible. It's scary. It's horrible.
What was that, Jack?
The weird comic series, or comic books that exist for it, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's a Netflix show, Dark Crystal: The Age of Resistance, and I watched that one, and then I watched the old Dark Crystal movie, and there need to be something in between, or the Skowskis or whatever they have committed large genocide on a group of creatures. I mean, there's just no other way to put it.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
I mean, there's large. It's worth watching. Both of them are worth watching. If you ever get a chance to with Netflix and ever get a chance to with Dark Crystal, they're both worth watching. Once again, it's a Jim Henson film. It's dark, but it's really good.
hence the title.
Dark
What?
Crystal.
Yeah, hence the title, Dark Crystal.
Jim Henson voiced one of the characters in the movie, one of the main characters in the movie. Jim Henson voiced. What about you, Mark? What is your fantasy movie of the 80s? Which one do you go back to?
Of the 80s?
Yeah.
I don't know if it'd be more 80s. I'm trying to think. There's so many. Kroll. I know it's not a great movie, but Kroll was.
Kroll's an amazing movie for what it is.
And I think it predates the 80s a little bit. That the animated Hobbit. I like that a lot.
1976 or 1979 when that came out, and that's also a good choice.
I prefer that to the actual live action movie that came out. But
good for you. I'm not saying that the live action was bad in any way, but you really need to see the animated. I think it was more Tolkien-esque than the live action. For some reason, I don't know. Maybe it's just because I grew up, and that's my earliest visual memories.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the style of animation I think Tolkien was absolutely in love with it because it mirrored his own, ability to draw so well. He wasn't a great artist, but they really took it to heart when they were like, okay, how are we going to draw this? Well,
animated movies are a whole different, in my mind, is a whole different subject than like a Jim Henson fantasy movie, or because with fantasy movies, especially in the 70s and going on up, I mean, you had like the short 20-minute movie or 28, maybe 30 movie, The Fairies, about a fairy who who separated his shadow from his body, so he has somebody to dance with or something like that. Then the shadow becomes evil. Then a human male has to come save the day. It's a really weird cartoon, but the drawing, the animated.
When I think of fairies, I think the best one would actually have to be Thumbelina.
I don't know what that is.
That's not surprising.
Did you ever see it?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen multiple versions of it. So yeah, I've seen it though. Then like fantasy, I'm thinking of other fantasy. You have The Hobbit. You have Lord of the Rings. The problem with the Lord of the Rings movie to me though was they mixed like real people in the anime.
Rotoscope.
Yeah, the rotoscope. That was a new technology, and I really liked it. But it did take a little bit of getting used to. It was a little weird. If you didn't know what they were doing, you actually figured it out on your own, kind of.
Right. I just didn't care for it.
And the fact that they went back to the original company, I think, to make the sequel, which was Return of the King. So if you watch them in order, you got one style, rotoscope, back to the old style. Yeah. I guess people didn't like rotoscope.
That was Rankin Bass, the same ones that did all the Rudolph movies and stuff like that. Yeah.
But,
they were all good. They're all for what they were, but it wouldn't suck to have a little continuity here and there, I guess. But I'm glad they existed. Yeah, I know, but I mean, we got them. If you really were a Lord of the Rings fan, you could get them on VHS, and you could have the whole experience. Spend a weekend with your bros. Just Lord of the Ring geeking out, and it was a good time.
Oh God. Sorry, I just got an alert on my phone, news alert. Sorry. No, it's not important.
Hey, no real world stuff, man. What are you doing? We already had enough of that. Thanks to the little guy.
Sorry. My phone's like
Shadow. When you stepped away, we were breaking down the scene a little bit when they were in the junkyard and they had the characters that were the hoarders, and I kind of gave my 2 cents on it. You want to?
Oh yeah. Thanks. I think it was actually kind of an important scene. Now to mention it, it showed it taught her, that what her life revolved around her teddy bears and things like that, and all her toys, her princess crown, and it really was like the defining moment for her character that made her realize and be able to give her little brother Lancelot. That was like the moment she grew up and understood, I don't want to end up like this. I'm going to end up like that. If you've ever seen my garage, I'm halfway there.
He's a borderline holder.
Yeah, I saw his when he broke out that Star Rovers. I was like, oh man, Shadow's hardcore.
Yeah, I got really lucky before the little guy was born. I was able, because I do eBay and I sell miniatures and stuff like that, old school stuff. But mostly I go there to buy, and I mastered the technique of being patient and waiting. Unless it's a one of a kind thing, you can really make your collection excellent. If you're willing to do the work, put in the work, and suffer the agonies of defeat from snipers and bidders, that just have more money and are willing to pay out the butt for that same thing that you really wanted, but you know, you've got a limit, and you've got to give yourself a limit when you are doing eBay like that. But you know, that scene, you know, was probably overlooked by a lot of people, but you know, that old lady was her in the future, so to speak. That was her destiny. If she didn't learn this valuable lesson that you know, she's there to save her little brother, and all her little treasures at home were nothing compared to, you know, a human life.
So in a roundabout way, does that make the Goblin King the good guy in this movie?
He wasn't like, you know, if you were to rank all the TV movie, fantasy, you know, fictional bad guys, he is so far down on the list. And with, you know,
put it in this way, all right, on the spectrum of morality of characters here, on the very far end of good, you have the dog. Not this dog. That's not this dog. But the dog in the movie is on the very good side. Best character. The very far evil side is the stepmom.
Stepmom.
The stepmom was somewhat of a bitch.
Well, no, he just you know, putting the dog out in the rain, you know, as opposed to bringing him in, cleaning him up, and letting him be a dog, you know, part of the family. You know, we don't have any forgiveness for people like that, is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
It depends on the whole sort of dog thing. I'll say this really quick. It depends on the weather and type of dog, because I know a lot of dogs, like huskies, that want to go out in the snow, and they just lay down in the snow and they're perfectly happy. Some dogs are meant for certain weather. This
dog wanted inside to be where the people are.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, you know, should always keep your dog in. No, because if you have a dog that prefers winter, you should let them enjoy the winter.
Yeah, sure. But he did. He wanted to be inside with his family.
The devil's advocate argument that I can make for this one is he's not like lawful good. He's not neutral good. He would be chaotic good.
Who?
The Goblin King.
Maybe.
Because he never goes outrightly. He never stops her outrightly. He never does anything to hurt anybody realistically.
And he was, you know, in that one speech, he was like, you know, if you do this, I'll do this. You know, I'll make you happy. You know, beyond your wildest dreams, you just need to, you know, do the same back, I guess. Which is, you know, kind of a weird thing to come from a villain. You know, usually they're like all about, you know, you just obey. That's it. But he was willing to, you know, I guess, you know, marry her or some such, you know, thing. I don't know.
Depends on what state of the labyrinth they're in. It depends, you know, for the age restriction. I mean, if they're in the Florida version of the labyrinth, he's golden. Yeah, I'm just, you know. But to play devil's advocate, I think he was actually not the hero, but he was not. I think he was chaotic good in the pretense that if he did not take the baby and he did not do what he did.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a solid chaotic neutral as opposed to chaotic good. I'm sure she would have probably turned him chaotic good had they, you know, settled down and raised a nice, happy goblin family. But I'm gonna stick with chaotic neutral.
I mean, honestly, shit. Depends on, yeah, you know, I love to make the joke. It also really depends on what part of Illinois you live in, where age restrictions a lot lowers or higher. But I'll be nice to the state of Illinois because it sucks. God, but
might be an advocate of nuking Chicago if my uncle didn't live there.
Chicago is its own creature. I mean, it's like,
yeah, Chicago. This is why Chicago needs to be its own state. All right, not even its own state. Just kick it out. Kick out Chicago, like we did with, was it like Singapore?
With what?
I don't know. Singapore. I think Singapore kicked out, or maybe Malaysia kicked out Singapore. I don't remember. But one of those countries picked out a city from the country because they didn't want the city there anymore, and then it became one of the richest cities on earth.
you Mark, living up in the Chicago area. What's your opinion of this, really quick? You think Chicago should become its own state or a sister
Just
state?
kick it out. Kick out Chicago.
Like I said, I live about a mile. I live about an hour outside of it. I'm in the northwestern part of Indiana, but I mean, it's got its flaws. It's got bad corruption in government, obviously, but it does have some pretty
Say
good
the
sports.
least.
Clubs. I like the Cubs. Food. There's so many good restaurants.
Oh, the food up in Chicago is not to be
The
ignored.
pizza, the Polish, the Maxwell hot dogs. I don't know. I know Shadow favors the pineapple thing, but
no. Anybody who eats pineapple pizza runs evil campaigns.
Hey, now, just because that's a fact doesn't make it true.
Anybody who likes the Rocky Horror Picture Show should go see medical help and runs evil campaign.
I didn't say I liked it. I just said I saw it. Big
Oh,
difference.
okay.
I liked it. I thought it was it was good for the experience in the movie theater. I mean, it's not a great movie, but being there to be part of the event is something everybody should do. Like,
I'm not gonna
in their
argue
teens
that
or
one.
whatever. I think it's
Yep.
it's like a it's like a rite of passage thing.
Exactly. Especially for the time, I got to meet Elvira 125, 30 times.
Well,
Every night, this movie star was handing me free tickets to midnight at the movies. And, she didn't tell me to go watch Rocky Horror. She said, here's free tickets. Go watch whatever you want. There's like 10 different movies playing every Friday and Saturday night. And we would do just that. It's just that's where the girls were. And at that moment in time, that was more important than seeing Pink Floyd The Wall for the 12th or 13th time.
Yeah, song remains the same. The Wall, Night of the Living Dead. That was when we
Wizards,
had
heavy
midnight
metal.
showings. Yeah, heavy metal. Yeah, the midnight showings were a thing, but that's not really a thing anymore. At least not where I live anymore.
I'm pretty sure they put the kibosh on that a long time ago. Because it did provide a lot of underage drinking, drug use.
Yeah.
Kids in the back seats of cars. Being stupid. And fights. There were fights from time to time. Not a lot, but there were a lot of reasons for parents to be like, "No, this is not a good thing." Fortunately, my parents were. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a thing in I don't know, late 80s, early 90s, a rite of passage thing, and a kind of in between thing. When you're 16 before you hit 20, 21, whatever. It's just the thing.
We didn't really have the drive-in movie theater experience was kind of like gone. It still existed for a while, but it was kind of like the equivalent for the previous generation. Everybody would go to the drive-in movie theater. They had places to hang out before, during, and after the movies. You had to go out of your car if you wanted popcorn from the theater, and you got to bump into people from school and ask girls out because you bump into them. Hey, you want to go out with me? We'll just meet back here next week or something. It was just part of growing up for so many people, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. But it had its moment in the sun, and people moved on to, I guess, video games after that, because there's really nothing like that for young people to do anymore, other than go to a high school football game or a dance. There's what do they have?
Not much, not anymore.
Yeah, they really don't have much to replace that.
Right. It's like the movies Goonies. Goonies being a perfect example. At that time period, a group of kids could disappear all day.
Yep.
Without their parents thinking twice about it. All day and almost all night, because one parent was probably thinking, well, my kid's sleeping at somebody else's house, and so forth and so on.
Yeah,
and now... Now
parents don't even do that, don't have the sleepovers, they don't have Everybody just you go to school, you come home, and that's
Well,
it.
unless you're me and I end up going to places where the parents are known for allowing their daughters to bring all their high school friends to drink.
That right there that's old as time. I mean,
No, here's the thing though. Here's the best part: is he allowed his daughters that were in high school, or maybe half or stepdaughters, I don't remember, who they were in high school, and they brought a massive group of people there. They were all drinking, and then 5 8th graders. What is this? For a second, I thought a bug just flew into my mouth. And then 5 8th graders come in there and do more damage to the property than 20 drunk alcoholic high schoolers.
I mean,
go ahead.
Go for it.
I was just gonna bring it back to the movie a little bit. So what about the scene when they were on the stairs? I looked it up and I forgot the name of what that style of.
It's MC Escher.
Yeah, that's it. That was really clever how that was done. I thought I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it was actually. It may have been a little longer than I liked, but it was, that was the end. That was the big, confrontation that she had to do. It's just that as soon as I saw him do that one scene where he walked up and defied gravity, I'm like, oh, okay, that's how you do it. You've got to figure out, put your faith, like when she finally jumped, you just got to, sort of, I would have crawled over the other side. If I'm sticking to the floor because gravity's holding me there, that's how it works here. But that's me overthinking it. That's how I would, in a dungeon or a game situation, deal with that. But, instead of it trying to be some sort of, fight scene or something, just as unrealistic where she would just get her ass handed to her, against the Goblin King. It was a clever way to make her have to, face a challenge, that and his, trying to convince her that, hey, let's do this instead of, take the baby back to the real world. Let's, hook up or whatever, because I'm pretty sure that's exactly what that conversation was. Stay with me, we'll get married and make goblin babies, and he'll be the first one.
Weird,
it is, but I mean that's what it was, and there weren't many other ways they could have done that finale, so to speak. What other choices? She never picked up a stick. I was like, as soon as I got into the labyrinth, I'd be grabbing me a club. Okay, I'm gonna need this. And later on, people were dropping swords and nobody thought to pick them up. I'm like, what the hell is this? Pick up a damn sword, stab the Goblin King at the end. But no. As soon as that, it was made pretty obvious this wasn't, a fight to the death kind of movie.
Well, with Jim Henson being a pronounced pacifist, if he could avoid violence in his movies, he was all about it.
Until Dark Crystal.
Well, Dark Crystal came out before this movie, and Dark Crystal, in its own degree, wasn't all that violent. It wasn't a violent solution at the end of the movie that made the movie, for the movie to end. It was basically a leap of faith, one would say, with Dark Crystal.
Yeah, I don't remember much about it. I remember a little bit more about Dark Crystal than I do this movie, but that's not saying much. The only thing I can remember is those evil bird people that Gamma World swiped the idea for later on and used them extensively as some of the reoccurring bad guys, which, if you look at the illustration, as tiny as it is, they were pretty scary. They would definitely give me pause.
Yeah, when she made that jump, though, like the whole spell and the illusion was shattered around her. Correct? So
yeah.
Once again, it's like a Jim Henson. It's just a Jim Henson movie. The movie's ending had a non-violent solution. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that in my fantasies.
Yeah,
It doesn't always.
absolutely. You know, it doesn't always have to be,
Yeah.
you know, a big dukaroo at the end of a Star Wars, you know, lightsaber duel or something like that. You know, those are good. Those are good. I mean, but, you know, if that's the only thing you go to, especially in a movie that was relatively, you know, nonviolent, although the scene, you know, the combat that was going on in the castle, you know, they were just hurting themselves, which I think was, you know, kind of, you know, a subliminal point throughout the whole scene. You know, the goblins are just doing damage to each other. They're, you know, they're really not accomplishing anything and doing more harm than good, which, you know, could be a very good allegory to, you know, the entire idea of war and combat. I'm okay with that, you know, especially, you know, a movie, let's face it, you know, probably more geared, you know, to, you know, little girls than little boys. So, yeah, I'm okay with that. Not saying that the girls can't do that sort of thing, but, you know, that to me, that's what girls are supposed to, you know, aspire to, not to be, you know, Red Sonja. Every once in a while, that's cool. But, you know, an entire world.
Dig Red Sonja in my life from time to time.
Right, but a world of nothing but Red Sonjas and Conans would kind of suck.
Fall apart pretty quickly.
So
yeah, exactly. It would fall apart. You know, you'd end up with a war of the sexes as opposed to a war of nations, which, you know, nobody wants to see except the really, you know, evil is evil. You know, Klaus Schwab's and George Soros types. That's kind of what they're shooting for, I think.
So we're at the last 9 minutes of the show. I want to say thank you, Mark, for joining us. Do you have a
absolutely it was a distinct pleasure?
Do you have a channel of your own?
No, I don't. I kind of found about Shadow and then Cigar from watching Legion of Mist stuff, and then I just started. I found out from you guys via that, and just enjoyed your shows and the way your guys' perspective and when you talk about different things.
Thank you, sir.
I really like the little impromptu live things you do too. Sometimes it's fun. I like it.
You know, they're less impromptu now because we've had so much success with you know, meeting people and enjoying their company and wanting it to continue. You know, every time we do a show, we don't want it to end. You know, we did 8+ hours last night, you know, after a very long stream the night before. And, you know, for the most part, people don't want to, you know, like hang up the phone, so to speak. And everybody we've met, I can't think of one person throughout this whole, you know, experience that we've met that I'm like, I hope they don't show up again. You know, that never happens. You know, we don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to agree on everything, but you know, our love for the hobby. That's all that's important. And if we can make it better, and if we could talk about other things and still have those same kinds of conversations, that, you know, we did something special. You know, how many shows, you know, on YouTube and things like that where it's very hostile. You know, people are trying to, you know, win an argument. We're not trying to win an argument. We're trying to share an opinion and have a good time with good people. So, you know, anytime you want to come back, you want to show up on the Shadow Show or Connell's Tuesday night show, you know, at least for me, it's an open invitation. Eventually, you know, we're gonna have to get the subscription so we can have 10 people, and then it's just gonna be, you know. But, you know, we'll burn that bridge.
Having less people can be better, but yeah, we definitely.
But at the same time, you know, it's like you're saying you're gonna have a party, but only 4 people can show up. That's not really a party, you know.
What I said, but yeah, I know what you mean.
You know, the more the merrier, and, you know, you can never have too many friends in my book. Right. You know, maybe you're that person who has too many friends. Okay, you know, sucks to be you. You know, but if I ever say that, I can't imagine what kind of world it will be. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, we're gonna have 1,000 people wanting to join the chat. But the people we've met have all been pretty solid individuals with something to add to the overall greatness of this hobby. So what movie are we going to watch next week? Because I know it's a little bit too early for the little guy to watch, to do Dresden. He's going to need a little bit more time. He's only done his first week back in school.
I say he still has one more, at least next month, he can pick out a movie because I'm still trying to get over the scientist.
I got an idea.
My hour and a half back, Jack, on that one. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah. I kind of felt like, while watching certain scenes of this movie, I kind of felt like it was a retribution for the scientist.
No, but
this movie is a classic that everybody should at least watch once in their life.
Yeah, this is a good, wholesome movie all the way around. Like I said, I went into it thinking this is gonna suck, and even at the beginning, but then that goblin scene, I'm just like, oh, that's cool. I mean, they're these cute little, not the way we probably picture goblins, but I'm like, you know what? Okay. I'm in. And then I saw the eyeball guys, and I'm like, okay, I'm a little more in now. Okay.
And then we went a bit lower, but then the rest happened.
You want to keep it at a wholesome PG, or do you mind jacking up the rating?
I've got a specific movie in mind, and I know everybody here except Jack's seen it. We all are going to have different opinions. I know Connell's going to cringe a little bit, but I'm going with Beastmaster.
I like
you ever seen it, Mark?
Yeah, it's been a long time, but yeah, I know the monster. I know the monster you're talking, Shadow. Yeah, I'd love to do that. I really like this because you guys get me watching. Okay, now I got a reason to go watch the movie, or you get me to put down a rule book and pick up an actual book. So I go, okay, I got to have this book read or listen to before the next show, and it gives me it forces me to do that. I kind of like that whole thing. So,
yeah, here in the house, we kind of call it homework. But you know what? If more homework was like this, what a much better world it would be. So, Connell, what's your cringy comment?
I say we do Beastmaster. I like Beastmaster. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I really do enjoy Beastmaster.
Okay.
And this is me being nice. I think if I wanted to do easy reviews. Well, I won't be here on the first weekend of September because I'll be camping. But until Jack has his schoolwork and everything else down pat, I want to keep these homework, as you put it, fairly not easy, but not pain in the ass. So let's do Beastmaster, and to keep it on that theory, on that program, let's do the 1970s or whatever when it came out. Arnold Schwarzenegger, God, I'm gonna hate myself. Conan.
On one condition.
The Barbarian.
Yeah, the Barbarian.
On one condition. One condition. You have to read the first Conan novel by Robert E. Howard so that you know where I'm coming from, because I know you got it. And if you can, I'm not. This is extra credit. If you can find a Savage Sword of Conan magazine.
Oh, I used to have them. I sold them all years ago. I used to have
them. Oh, dude, breaking my heart, man.
I'll see what I can do on the Savage Sword one. I do actually have Conan the Fire.
That's not number one.
No, it's number 3.
The Tower of the Elephant Shadow.
Something like that, yeah. Hold on, let me. I've got an extra. I actually have an extra copy of it here.
Because when he released the stories, they weren't put out chronological order when he first started. I remember seeing that cover in the bookstores. What's the title of it, Shadow?
Just Conan.
Oh, just Conan.
It's literally just Conan. The first story in here is it's introduction, letter from Robert E. Howard to P.S. Miller, the Hyborian Age Part 1, and then the Thing in the Crypt.
The Thing in the Crypt, okay.
That's where he finds the sword.
The Atlantean sword.
I don't know. I mean, he loses it like 8 minutes later, but yeah.
Okay.
He never holds on to anything long.
Right.
Maybe his loincloth would be like, his loincloth and his sandals are about the only thing he probably has from beginning to end. And even then, probably not. But, that's the only thing you're guaranteed that Conan's going to have. But
He'd always get fortunes and lose them and get them and lose them.
I'll see if I can get a hold of, I'll see if I can get, I could probably YouTube the first book. Because I haven't been able to find it elsewhere, but I'll go do that route. And I'll do my best to get it knocked out. We'll do the
Here. Enlarge my screen so you can see this picture.
Oh, that's Jack.
This kind of art that's in all of the edition of Conan that I have is where I get my definitive visual impression of Conan. It's obviously the Frazetta covers are great, absolutely stunning, but growing up as a kid, I always wanted to draw comic books, and I tried my hand at it. Not so good. I'm better at writing them. But I did draw and ink my own stuff for a while, and the black and white part of it was where I was like, you know what, this looks good. This looks good. Then when I tried to color them using what they said in the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way that they use, that kind of screwed up my artwork. But I would do some stuff in black and white, and I'm like, this is good. This is decent. I can run with this. And it just, I mean, you've read them, Mark. You know what I'm talking about with the black and white magazines. It was just, that's all you needed. You didn't need any color. When they did colorize them, it's like there's something missing. They took something away by adding something to it, if that makes any sense to me. It's...
Yeah, 100%. Most of my artwork, at least traditional, is just pencil. I usually never add colors to them. The most I'll do is, if it's on a dry erase board, I'll add like slanted lines for color occasionally. And whenever I translate it to digital, I always add color there. But I just feel like it's not necessary. In some cases it is necessary, but not always.
Right.
Most of the time, I think.
For me, it's that simple adage: less is more. If this is all you need, but it's actually fantastic, then there were some great artists back in the day. Bernie Wrightson was my favorite. He did Swamp Thing as well, and he was just, this is all I need. This is great, But I also was a big fan of things like Creepy Magazine, Eerie Magazine, Vampirella, Savage Sword of Conan. All that was, it was like the big boy comics, They were bigger magazines, a little bit more sexy, not actual sex, but, a little bit more provocative, a little more, okay, this isn't porn, but, I'm still thinking the same things,
I still think they all should be put up against the wall and shot.
Okay, but it was when I realized that, this art form can be for, more than just kids. It's like, this is actually art. This is literally, every image is just stunning. So if you can find something, cool. If you can't, that's okay too. I know money's tight, and a good copy, I don't even mean a good copy, but just getting any one copy of a Savage Sword is not cheap. But for me, what I did, I only got a couple of, I went with the annuals. I even have a copy of the annual number 1 and 2, and I was able to pick them up for like $5-7, maybe 8 or 9 with shipping. And I got a solid piece of Conan, history with what I liked about the annuals. If you know comic books, an annual is, you don't have to wait till next year to read the rest of the story or next month. It's just one story or 2 stories or 3 stories in one magazine. You're good to go. When you buy like issue 37, you better have 36 and 38 on standby, because it's a sequential thing, and you might be left hanging at the end of issue 37. You're like, oh crap, I got to go get number 38. Oh crap, for some reason it's $12. I don't want to do that just yet. Like you and recollect your collection. I have absolutely no problem doing it a couple months from now. Not right now. I'm trying to get ready for Christmas. But, if either of you guys can go out there and grab one or borrow one, I highly recommend it. But, if all you can get is this Conan book, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to say a half a dozen or more images that were probably in the Savage Sword of Conan later on down the road. I'm good. We'll be able to understand where each other's coming from when it comes to the Conan movie, because Connell already knows I'm not a big fan of it. But
see, I like the Jason Momoa Conan.
Here's the thing. It would have only taken a little bit to totally have sucked me in. And I would have been, okay, this is Conan. And it's simple little things, not just the hair dye, but a couple other little things that we'll talk about. And I would have been, okay, this is Conan. I'm cool. I'm good with it. Unfortunately, they didn't. And I doubt they did with the Momoa version or the TV show version. But, we'll take that one step at a time.
TV show version, I remembered I watched one episode of it, and Conan cried in it. I was like, no.
Unless it was because Belit died. Was it the death of Belit?
It wasn't even Belit. It was just some love interest he had in it, and it was just
no.
Conan doesn't
there was
cry.
only one. There was only one woman.
Pirate.
That was it.
Queen, yeah.
That was it. Well, it was his actual equal in every way, and even after that, when he finally got married, deep down in his heart, he was thinking of her. There's just.
What's the first book called?
Just Conan. Just make sure it has. Make sure it has the thing in the crypt.
You can, Connell, does your library do the thing with Hoopla? The Hoopla app has a lot of, has a lot of Conan audio books and actual stories.
I'll have to look for that one. I'm looking at.
Because Jackie's got to do the same thing, He's got to get through that too. Otherwise, it won't work. If everybody's on the same page, then that's all I ask. It's if you've never read any Conan ever, compared to having read what I read, you're going to have a completely different opinion. And while it's justified, it's just not as informed as someone could be to enjoy the bare minimums, in my opinion, of Conan. It's not too much to ask. That
No, it's not.
If you profess to like Conan, what are you waiting for? There's 11 books waiting for you, the original 11 books, and then there's a whole bunch of other Conan. If you're still not done and you need more Conan in your life, because who doesn't? There's a lot more to go and experience, in book form. There's, the other authors that, I think technically there's only about 30 Conan books out there, but a lot of them were written by people who didn't know Robert E. Howard or started writing Conan many decades after the last people wrote Conan books. I'll get to those one of these days, but I like to stick with the people that at least met him like once or something, or wrote a letter to him, or lived in his time period, or shortly thereafter. People who decide to write a Conan book right now. I'm going to write a Conan paperback book. You better be an expert. You better have some receipts, some qualifications before you just think you're going to try your hand at it, because people expect a certain writing style, and I think they should. I'm not saying they should emulate Robert E. Howard's every word and use every phrase that he ever used, but there's reason people like certain authors. They have their own style, and if you're going to write about an individual's, most famous work, you should at least have that much appreciation for it. What you looking up, Connell?
I'm looking at the book order. Conan the Conqueror is the first book on this one.
That's not it.
Well, that
Conan
came out.
the
Well, the first one came out in the Strange Tales in 1963 or no,
Oh, no,
1930, 1932 was the first
Conan the
appearance.
Conqueror is like number 9.
So I'm just trying to find the correct book order. So
Yeah, because when they originally put them out, Shadow, I think they weren't in sequential order.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah, they the most of them came out in different magazines and things like that. But this particular series goes from him at his earliest age all the way up to where he's a king, etc. And it's the most sequential rendition of Conan, as far as I know. There's a reason why there's number 1 on the cover. The other ones, I don't think did that.
was that a
The other authors,
Dell paperback or a Ray or
Ace.
Ace? Okay.
Ace
But,
Fantasy. Yeah.
Robert E. Howard, L. Sprague de Camp, and Lynn Carter. And those, I know Lynn Carter and I'm pretty sure Sprague de Camp all wrote other stuff after this, and those are the people I will accept as fair game to read for the most part. After that, I'm gonna need some receipts. I'm gonna need some
I've been
convincing.
Lynn Carter was kind of a wannabe, but he did have some. His barbarian was Thongor, the barbarian.
I have some of those.
So they didn't make a Marvel comic of it first. It was short-lived, I think, but yeah.
Brack the Barbarian's another good one by John Jakes. The Barbarian, yeah. It's actually really what?
If you haven't read it, you need to read Kothar the Barbarian.
I have that too.
Okay, the author is real interesting too. If you know what the author created that's famous, even more so than Kothar.
I'd have to look it up, but it's actually, it's amazing. I actually have a lot of books that I've never read, and I just recently picked up The Dying Earth. I read those for the first time this year. I read Brack the Barbarian for the first time this year. I made it all the way through Ursula Gwynn's Earthseed for the first time. I read the first book, didn't make it through the second. This time I pushed myself all the way through, and trust me, the first one's the best. But I was just amazed when I finally got my studio set up here, how disorganized everything I had in the garage. And I'm like, I got this. Oh, I'll bring it up to the studio. I'm reading it, now that I'm organized and I know where everything is. It's amazing the crap you pick up over the years.
It's just Conan's short stories. He's fighting a guy in a red cloak, right?
Yep, it's actually a gorilla, but I'm not going to spoil it for you.
No, it is a gorilla.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's the one. That's the one you want. I'm going to let the little guy read my copy, unless you find an audio link to it and send it to us so that he can power through it, and do 2 things at once, because he still has to, do homework and things like that.
All right. Well, it is a little bit over
We're a
little bit over the 2-hour time period. Thank you.
Well, what was that, Mark? Let Mark finish.
Beastmaster is next week, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, that's going to be fun. Grab your popcorn and get ready for another lighthearted romp through fantasy.
So I want to thank those who have in the chat have stayed with us for the last 2 hours plus. I want to thank Mark for joining us this weekend.
Absolutely.
Of course, Shadow and Jack, I enjoy hanging out with you guys as much as I do.
Yeah.
And I hope everybody has a good weekend. And remember, roll your dice in the dark and fill out your character sheet in the dark. With that being said, Jesus, I'm screwing that one up. Anyways, y'all, talk to y'all later.
Also, don't leave the door to your meth lab open.
I hear the feds on the way. I hear the sirens.
Yeah, they're on their way.